one of my all-time favorite bands. The great, the legendary Saxon is back with a brand new album, Hell, Fire, and Damnation. So what do I think of it? Find out next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to another episode of The Metal Dude Abides. I couldn't be more excited, as today we're going to do a brand new album review for the band Saxon. This is going to be, oh my word, their 24th studio album, stretch out over the past now 44, maybe even 45 years of making music. And you know what's amazing? They're still making great music. I've been so amazed at some of the bands that were really thriving in the early 80s who have put out just fantastic albums in the last few years. So the question is this going to be one of those albums? Does Saxon still have the magic? Do they still have the juice to put together a great album in 2024? Well, let's find out. But before we get to that album, just a quick note. This is a good time to subscribe to this channel, to give it a thumbs up, and be a part of the family of the Metal Dude. All right, enough talking. Let's talk about Hellfire and Damnation. Over the years, Saxon's developed a signature sound. When you hear a Saxon song, you know it's Saxon. There's a lot of bands that vary up their sounds from album to album, and then there's bands that you are consistently good or consistently make the same type of music, so it's instantly identifiable. A good example of this is AC/DC, right? They have been around for many, many years, and the minute Angus Young starts breaking into a riff, you know it's AC/DC. Saxon is that way, and one of the reasons is that they have certain things that they do in their albums that we all have grown to love over the years. And one of those is they really like to start out an album with kind of an intro followed by just this epic song. And this album starts out no differently. They have kind of a combination of an intro called The Prophecy that leads into the title track, Hell, Fire, and Damnation. Now, if you have been following Saxon, like on their last album, their opening track had the intro embedded within the song. So Per Diem has this beautiful intro before it breaks into the meat of the song. If you go back a couple albums before that, you'll run into, the classic intro, a minute and a half intro of like Olympus Has Fallen, then followed by Thunderbolt. This one follows that trope in that there is a intro called The Prophecy, where there is a very cool intro, spoken word, but in the background of the spoken word, things are gearing up. Things are building up to a crescendo, and just as that crescendo gets to that melting point, boom, in breaks Hell, Fire, and Damnation. This was the first single that Saxon released, and I think they picked the best song for this. I do believe this is the best song on the album. It really gets the entire album off to a great start. So the first track is a winner. Let's see what else is on the album. Now, if Hell, Fire, and Damnation was the best song on the album, the second track is my favorite song off the album, Madame Guillotine. There's one of the things I'm going to say about this album right now is that every song on this album is a banger. Every song on here is a good rock song, good heavy metal song. The consistency on this album is excellent. But there are certain things about a song that might stand out. Madame Guillotine stands out for a couple of reasons. Number one, the story that they're telling in the background is fantastic. A very clever song. It really centers on the French Revolution. And, I am a bit of a geek when it comes to history. I do love tales of the French Revolution. What a very interesting time. And one of the things that's just fascinating to me is the fact that during the French Revolution, they were marching the kings. They were marching the elite. They were marching the haves in the society to their death through this, this symbol of the French Revolution is the guillotine. And one of the things that astounds me is, as brutal as the guillotine was, what you had these very famous, very wealthy, very powerful people being brought to their end. And in front of massive crowds, people were just pouring out into the streets to watch people get beheaded. And it became like, I think they even say it in here, the lust for this violence, the lust for this terrifying scene just couldn't be stopped. It was just like this blood frenzy. And this song is told from the side of the guillotine that says, listen, you can look at me as the bad guy, but I was just there doing my job. Very clever. I really liked the way they did it. Lots of really good catchphrases that I liked, where they talk about the guillotine being the scourge of the rich, talking about the fact that I was designed to kill, but the crowds that built me were more enthused with the thrill, because as many people know, with the French Revolution, what started out, perhaps if you go that far, as justice, started to become just pure revenge. And many people in the lower class said, this is our chance, right? And so the guillotine is one of the most infamous symbols, and one of the most violent times in the history of the world. Just horror. And I think Saxon provides that horror of what was happening, but again, coming from the side of the guillotine, basically stating their innocence. And I think this has one of the cool change-ups where the guitar solo here is a very somber, introspective. So it's not like Saxon is just promoting this kind of violence or glorifying this kind of horror. There's a real somber, this was not one of our proudest moments in humanity. So all that to say, I love Madame Guillotine. It is my favorite song on the album, and it is track number 2. Now, after the epic beginning and a bit of a somber second track, Saxon really does something cool here, because now they break in with Fire and Steel, a very fast track, probably the fastest track on the album. And not only do I'm always a sucker for a good scorcher of a song, it really fits into the album perfectly here, because we just, again, had a very somber song. We're also going to have kind of a mid-paced song that follows. So throwing this in here, not only do I love the song itself, but I love the placement of the album. The album is right at that point where, okay, we've slowed it down a little bit. We're going to be mid-tempo after this. Let's put a real fast one in here. Fire and Steel fits the bill. Really great song. And I love this song. And the album is just cooking along after 3 tracks. Now, the 4th track might be a little bit controversial. I'll be honest, this is the second single that they released off this album, so I had a chance to listen to this, like a week ago. I've listened to it, a few more times than I have some of the other songs on the album. And I'll be honest, the first time I heard it, I was like, I don't know. It wasn't my cup of tea. Didn't care for it. But after the second listen and the third listen, I really started to realize just how secretly and sneaky this song is catchy. And I really have fallen in love with kind of a very strange opening riff on this song. It kind of has like kind of a keyboard effect at the beginning, but then it breaks into this really cool, infectious riff that I really enjoy. The other thing I have to like about the song is it takes place in my home state, Roswell, New Mexico. And of course, they're talking about the alien conspiracy back in the 40s. Um, you know, supposedly a UFO crash there. Supposedly, not only did a UFO crash there, there were aliens that they uncovered in the wreck. And of course, it all came out as a weather balloon incident. So this really plays into that controversy. This song has grown on me. Again, my first listen to it, I didn't quite take to it, but by the third, fourth time I've listened to it now, really find myself just humming along to it. Again, very catchy, very hooky, and again, about my home state. So I love it. There's something in Roswell. If you didn't quite catch it the first time, try it a couple times. It really is one of those songs that creeps up on you and is very good. I would say at this point of the album, we're 4 songs in. This album is excellent so far. So at this point, I'm really enjoying this album. Um, it is just so great to see these older bands invigorated and putting out some great music. But I'm also going to always be truthful with my audience, and I don't believe in just praising everything they do. And so I'm going to be a little nitpicky here. The back half of this album, probably not as strong as those first 4 songs. Like at this point, I'm really cooking. But now we get into Kubla Khan and the Merchant of Venice. This song's okay. This isn't a great song. I found myself kind of like, this is pretty good, and kind of looking forward to the next track to come on. They have a really cool chorus in this song. It's a good song. I just don't think it's quite as strong as the first few songs on the album. It has a really cool theme where again, this is kind of a cool album. For the most part, there's a few exceptions to that. This is like if you walked into history class one day in high school and all of a sudden you realize the history teacher's out sick and Biff Byford is sitting at the front of the class. He's going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. We've already talked about several historical events. We've talked about the French Revolution. Now we're talking about the Silk Road, of all things. Not the kind of topic you would normally see in a heavy metal song. So pretty cool topic, but probably not one of my favorite songs on the album. And we're going to have a few more historical songs coming up. So let's keep moving. All right. The next song, I might have to just admit to being a guilty pleasure. If you were born in the age of the internet, you may not quite understand the significance of the next song, Pirates of the Airwaves. When I was a young metalhead, we were still ruled by the record companies and the radio stations. And the radio stations, we grew up to find out, were just kind of extensions of the record companies. So whatever the record companies wanted you to hear, that's what you were going to hear on the radio. And heavy metal was a type of music that was not popular. In the late 70s, hard rock and heavy metal was considered dinosaur rock. It was on its way out. Everybody was looking at, believe it or not, disco. Everybody was looking over in England, especially. Punk rock was huge. We're talking about the rise of the Clash and the Sex Pistols. And, hard rock and heavy metal was done for. It's hard to make a move when you can't get anybody to play your music. And one of the things that was very cool, 2 things, and I think that's what this story is about, is that some people here in the United States anyway would put a radio station in Mexico just below the border and completely blow the US FCC out of the water because they could produce a signal that would shoot across the United States, and then they could play whatever they wanted. Oh my word, what fiends! And there's even a movie out that talks about some people that got a boat and just went just outside of U.S. jurisdiction out in the ocean and started playing the kind of music they wanted to play. And it's kind of funny because it really, people really wanted to hear different types of music, and heavy metal being one of those types of music that was just not popular, and it wasn't something that was being broadcast. As big as metal got in the 80s, and we all know in the late 80s, heavy metal ruled the world. It's kind of funny to think about that in the late 70s, early 80s, you couldn't get played on a radio to save your life. And really, if you look at Metallica in the heart of all that never got played until, really, when they produced the single One. So anyway, this is about people being able to break through the monopoly and playing really good music. One of the cool stories that came out of the new wave of British heavy metal is, while they couldn't get a lot of heavy metal played, there was some, I guess you would call them disc jockeys, that were in the clubs in London, and they were playing Iron Maiden, and they were playing Saxon, and they were playing Def Leppard, and people started showing up at these clubs to air guitar, because this was this great music, and they couldn't hear it on the radio, and they couldn't hear it in any form of mainstream, so they would come out to the clubs. And so there's a couple of legendary DJs that really helped promote and bring about the new wave of British heavy metal. That's what this song's about. So from a person who was around during that era, I think this song is really cool, and I love the story behind the song. Pirates of the Airwaves, again, one of my personal favorites. Now, the best song, or my favorite song on this back half of the album, is 1066, back to Biff Byford Teaches Us History. And this is about the Viking invasion of England, and pretty much the Norman-Saxon War, in which the Saxons were thoroughly defeated. Lots of carnage. And this song is kind of cool because it's, again, very cleverly written, because it comes from the side of the losing team in the war. Something you don't hear a lot. They always say, history is written by the victors. This is a song about the side that got slaughtered. This is the side that lost. This is the side that was, lost, thousands of lives and lost their homeland. This is a very moody song, and it really captures, with like that heavy metal gallop, the horrors of war and really the stakes of war. Like when you go into this battle, you've got it all on the line, and how it feels when you lose. I really like this song. The only thing that would have been cool is if you guys have been following Saxon, they were, made a guest appearance on the last Monomarth album, where they did a very cool Vikings and Saxon type of duo. And since this song also talks about Vikings and Saxons, it would have been kind of cool if they'd have found a way to squeeze a Monomarth in there just to do maybe a quick vocal or something cool in there. But nonetheless, kind of a sequel to what a Monomarth did. This is, I think, by far the best song on the back end of this album. I really love 1066, and you might want to give this a listen to. Very unique song. Again, both a very good song with a very good story and a very unique perspective. Love this song. The next song is a song called Witches of Salem. And it's kind of interesting. This song has, even though we've been talking about war, and we've been talking about guillotines, and we've been talking about a lot of heavy historical facts, the song has always seemed to stay, somewhat up here. Witches of Salem really is a much darker song than the rest of the album. This is, of course, again, Biff Byford's history lesson, where we're going to go back to Salem, Massachusetts, and the Salem witch trials, and how prejudice and false accusations that were leading young women to be burned at the stake, and how terrible these events are. So another dark moment in human history that, you know, um, it's amazingly powerful story about prejudice and about, the mob getting carried away. This is very similar to Madame Guillotine, if you will, because again, it talks about, something that maybe, was started out as a small thing that should have been like people should have said, no, this is wrong right away. But then the bloodlust started happening, and people just started getting into it, and created some of the most horrific incidents in human history. So this is a dark song. I like the song. Again, the metal dude's going to be a little nitpicky. It seems like the song was a little bit too long. It seems like at the end of the song we're hitting the chorus. One of the things about early 80s metal is they really lean in on that chorus. But sometimes that chorus can get a little bit monotonous. So I think this song would have been much better at like 4 minutes rather than the 5 minutes. It seemed a little stretched out, but a really good song, really creepy opening. I think you'll dig this song. And that leads us to the final track of the album. All right. Saxon opened us with a furious, epic beginning, but they also know how to close the album, because Supercharger is the final track on the album, and it is a fast and furious song about muscle cars and going out on a summer night and roaring your engines, man and metal. Just a really cool song, and probably the second fastest song. This song is very similar in a way to Fire and Steel. We just got through a very dark song, like which is Salem. We had just got through with a very somber song, Madame Guillotine. Why not pick it up a notch, bring it back up to a higher level, take kind of the downer part of the songs and really get back to something that'll really get you to bang your head and shake your fist. So Supercharger is a great closer. The album starts out fast and it ends fast and never really loses any energy along the way. A really solid album. And let's wrap this thing up, and I'll give you my final ratings for this album. I think my first impressions of this album are just such appreciation for a band like Saxon to be putting out some of the best music in their storied careers in 2024. I loved Saxon in the early 80s. They were one of my favorite bands. If someone would have come up alongside me from the future and said, these guys are going to be putting out a great album 43 years from now, I would have been like, what are we talking about here? And here we are in the year 2024, and Saxon is still putting out great new wave of British heavy metal music. It is the classic heavy metal, and it is wonderful. The band just really seems invigorated. A lot of the older bands, and I think it's because there's such an energy out there in the heavy metal world right now. We've got so many good young bands that these older bands are getting that inspiration from. We saw that when the new wave of British heavy metal hit, when there was some bands that had been around, like Sabbath, that seemed Judas Priest, that got invigorated through the new wave of British heavy metal, as the energy in that scene was feeding everybody. And so Saxon, what a great continued great music. The other thing I want to note about this was produced by Andy Sneap, who's been doing some of the best albums, classic metal albums around. He has been the producer on several Accept albums, and if you know anything about me, I have been so in love with the new Accept albums. He's working with Judas Priest. He's really has a great skill and art in bringing that classic 80s metal with a new modern punchiness that it really hits home. I love his production, and again, Saxon using that here. really brings out that music. Also, I want to point out that they have a new guitarist, Brian Tatler, who was the lead guitar for Diamond Head, another new wave of British heavy metal band. Of course, Diamond Head known for the song Am I Evil, among others, that have been covered by Metallica and were such an inspiration for Metallica. I think Brian Tatler is a great addition to the band. You always wonder when you start changing out members if it's going to change the sound, but it changes it in a good way. There's little slight differences that you can see in the new band, but overall, I think it just breathes new life into Saxon. And when we talk about Saxon, we got to talk about Biff Byford, who's now, I believe, just turned 73 years old, I believe, and he's never sounded better. It is so cool to see these older heavy metal guys still bringing it. Singing is one of those things where we see a lot of singers that just can't do it past a certain age, and to see people like Rob Halford and Biff Byford still bringing it well into their 70s is really inspirational and cool. Don't look past these moments, everybody. This is when you see these people that have been such inspirations to the music, have had such a role in heavy metal over the years, still coming out, going on tour. In Europe, they're going out with Judas Priest and Uriah Heep, I believe, but they've already started announcing dates in the States. I'm in Denver, Saxon. If you see this, come to Denver. I know they haven't announced a Denver date yet, but I'm sure hoping that they come out here. Really cool album, and I give it a full-throated endorsement. This is really good stuff. If you like classic heavy metal, this is a must-get. If you haven't given classic heavy metal a chance, this is a good one to give it a try. My favorite tracks, again, are the title track, Madame Guillotine, and 1066 are probably the three best songs on the album. Although, like I say, personal favorites, There's Something in Roswell's growing on me, and Pirate of the Airwaves is also good. If you like a real fast song, I highly recommend Fire and Steel. So there you go. A great album. Congratulations to Saxon on their 24th album being this good, this exciting. Go out, take a listen. I think you really, really like it. And that's our episode for tonight. We'll be back here, as you guys know. This is a good time to subscribe to the channel. We're on every Tuesday night, looking at new music, looking at older music. We have a series going right now where we look through all of the different years of the Grammy Awards, because as many of you probably know, the Grammy Awards have been a dumpster fire our entire lives and have always ignored heavy metal. So we do a series on that. The good news is this year we're here doing the Grammys live. So the 2024 Grammys, we're going to be doing some special content about who should really be picking up Grammys this year, who should be the nominees across all the different hard rock, heavy metal categories. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude wishing you a very pleasant evening, and I will see you back here next Tuesday. Take care.